All right, we're studying the Bible, we're thinking about the Bible study process, and we're working our way through the learn stage, the learn phase of the process. Here's the process. So we've thought about the importance of looking to see what the text says. All right, we've got to see what's there, but then we need to learn, what does it mean? We've got to grasp the meaning of the passage before we can then go on to think about responding to it in terms of our love and our lives flowing out from this. So this is really the central and critical phase that we're focusing in on at this point, learning what the text means. And so we've thought about the fact that there are these basically three elements, three things we're going to be wrestling with: the context, the content, the intent. And in terms of the context, we've thought about in the previous video the historic context. Where does this piece of writing fit in history? Knowing about the author, the recipients, the situation, knowing, I didn't mention this, but that the emperor was Nero, and their circumstances were challenging, and the pressure against them was rising. All of that helps us to understand what he's written in the letter, but also the written context. This also makes a difference. When you're looking at a paragraph, you've got to see what's come before and what comes after. When you're looking at a sentence, you need to see what's before, what's after, even a word. Every detail in written communication is going to be helped by understanding its context. That's true wherever we are in the Bible. Certainly is very true when we're dealing with a letter. There's a flow of thought. Peter was not drunk, he wasn't wasteful, he wasn't scattered when he wrote this. He wrote this inspired by God, and he wrote it well. So there's a flow of thought moving through the letter that, as we understand that flow can help us understand this passage in particular. And so, just in a very simplistic way to look at the passage, here's our target passage here, 1 Peter 2, 1 through 10. Let's just think about what's come before. There's the opening, and then he celebrates salvation. He really gets into the blessing of our future inheritance kept for us as we are being kept by God. He talks about the present reasons for joy in the midst of difficult times, talks about the fact that we're part of God's plan that's been worked out from centuries before, and here we are, guys. And so that's that salvation opening. And then from verses 13 down to 25, he talks to them about how they should be standing out, living with hope in a hopeless world, living holy lives, fearing the Lord and doggedly loving one another, the things that make them different from the world around. He's encouraging that. That's the end of chapter 1. Then we come to our focus passage. It's coming after that. So all of that is flowing in. What do we have here? Well, we need to be aware of what's come before, and then we need to notice what's coming after. I've kind of made it a little bit obvious the way I've labeled this, but in the subsequent sections, he's going to get into some specifics. Submission to authority, especially unjust authority. Submission to masters, as in unkind ones in particular, that don't treat you well. Submission to husbands, ones that don't love Jesus and therefore don't love you well. And then kind of a wrap up to that section, submission, and then setting up suffering, which is going to be the real target of what comes subsequently. That's kind of the high point, if you like, of the letter. End of chapter 3 and all of chapter 4 is really going after that issue of suffering. So notice the placement of the passage we're looking at. Now, technically, we should look at the passage, look at the context, look at the passage, look at the context. We're looking at the context first, but maybe it can serve to help us. What Peter's doing in this section here, right in this bit here, is he's completing the kind of flow of the opening. Okay, the opening before he gets into really dealing with the specifics of their situation. And what is he doing in the opening? He's really trying to establish who they are. He wants them to be clear on their identity, their salvation, their sanctification, the work of God in their lives, to give them hope and joy and love and the fear of the Lord and all these truths of chapter 1. And it seems to me like at the start of chapter 2, he is not quite ready to move into the specifics of the challenges they're facing. Doesn't want to get into the specifics until he's really underlined their identity. They've got to know who they are in order to be able to face the things they're facing, in order to be able to deal with the challenges ahead. They've got to know who they are. Now, I'm saying that because I've studied the passage and I know that's what he talks about. But in its context, it really makes sense. And the context and the passage feeding back and forth can help us to understand what it is that he's trying to achieve in his written communication. So here's the passage. Again, we're not going to dig into it yet. Next couple of videos, we'll get into some of the details here. But yeah, there's the so connecting back to the previous chapter. Put away this stuff, your old life. You've now got a new life. And your new life and identity is connected to Christ, described there in verses 4 and 6. And then this is who you are in between. Okay, he's really wanting to get that across to them. And as he goes down, he clarifies that the you who believe, this is an exclusive group. It's not everybody. It's just those who believe. Everyone else, this is their lot, if you will. And then back to 9, but you, so back to the you again, and then a whole load of truth regarding their identity, who they are. And so you see the context is helping us, because it's like, okay, he's setting up now so that he can move on to how they live amongst a Gentile and antagonistic community or society. That's following on from this. Therefore, this must be important to set that up. So there you go. A little look at the written context. Again, the more you look into the detail, the more you'll end up going back out to the context to see what's going on. But we're just picking up the pieces here. The historic context, where does it sit in history? The written context, where does it sit in the flow of thought? Next video, we'll get into the content.